conflict. Chapter 3. As he kept flying eastbound, he thought back to all the cheers at the train yard. It made him feel sick in his stomach, people looking up to him like he was some savior. They didn't even know that 946 humans, 67 dogs, 16 cats, 212 different species of birds and many more died just because he couldn't face the damn facts and move on. He felt like the scum of the earth, just standing mid-air and looking as those people were praising him. He didn't deserve any of that. He wondered how many people would figure out that he was the cause of the disaster. He rescued Tattletale and that girl got enough information from him while he was lamenting his actions, looking at the ruins of the city standing mid-air. The way her breath quickened, her heartbeat got erratic looking at him, and the feeling of fear emanating from her meant that she had a decent idea of what he was capable of. He felt a similar sense for Emily Piggott within the PRT headquarters, but that woman already had general distaste for normal para-humans, so him showing a bit of what he could do had really shaken her up. To be honest, he wasn't surprised that there were people already getting wary of him. This is not a world where people wave their hands and explode 3 large planets in an instant or tie chains around the solar system and pull it along for a trip through the universe. Power here is a lot more subtle. People were given various sets of powers by the shards not to help humans, but to study the way powers react with each other and gather data. Flechette was a para-human who could definitely harm him, maybe even kill him if lets her, but the thing is that even with the power of Sting, she's just a normal human, peak human with training perhaps, but that won't help her if fires an invisible blast of energy at the speed of light, or if just moves towards her and tosses her towards space. She might just pop midway due to the pressure being applied on her body. The worst weakness that absolutely no para-human could avoid is that their abilities only work within the atmosphere of Earth. After all, it wouldn't do the entities any favor if their guinea pigs simply took off after receiving new abilities, and he had no such restriction. So yes, what he just showed to the world in Brockton Bay was going to cause waves around the world, and a lot of people are going to be gunning for him. He didn't particularly care about them right now. There is still some time before they make their move. Before that, he wanted his powers under control. It's shameful that he was still creating sonic booms while traveling, despite knowing that physics doesn't apply to him. He was so lost in saving the people and feeling bad for his actions that let his powers out of control and let physics affect him. This can't happen anymore. He needs to know his powers so that he can properly train them and use them to their fullest. He had already reached Europe during his inner musing and was floating above the Alps, a perfect place for him to practice in solitude. He could hear so many different languages being spoken he didn't understand. The Alps went through so many European countries that not knowing any language would irritate him every time he flexed his hearing and sight to find out what was happening around the world. It was time exercised his final ability. He looked within himself and found 10 orbs of pure potential waiting to be unleashed. These were crystallization of the very concept of knowledge and potential, waiting for their user to mold them into what they wanted and consume them. After all, there is no fruit sweeter than the fruit of knowledge. He willed 2 charges to take the form of language and assimilated with them. He now knew every human language on Earth and could learn newer languages by simply hearing a few words. All of the sudden, all of the chatter from the surrounding countries started making sense. Italian, French, Swedish, German and many more started to flow towards him. He looked around to find out exactly where he was in Europe. Seeing through a tour guide booklet and comparing the map to his real-time location, he now knew that he was flying right above Mount Matterhorn of the Alps, standing between the borders of Switzerland and Italy. Perfect. Now he can dig a cave here and practice in peace. After settling down in his new cave and sitting down in cross-legged position, he first wanted a more scientific knowledge of his energy manipulation abilities. He needed to get his emotions under control, have a basis in martial arts and learn more about biology. He spent 2 charges on energy, 1 charge on emotion management, 1 charge on meditation, 2 on martial arts and 2 more on biology. The next instant the floodgates of knowledge opened within his mind. He now knew how energy works, the steps he needed to take get his power under control and the various applications of his power. Energy at its core is property which is quantitative in nature that must be transferred to anything for it to work. It can be transformed into so many different types but can never be created or destroyed, and it was here that he broke the universal laws again. He lifted his palm and will a small orb of energy into existence. The cave was filled with a soft white light from the orb in his palm. He could create energy. He still didn't know how because 2 charges were not enough for that. He had many hypotheses running around his head but none of them really made sense to him. Right now he simply willed into existence because he could. Destroying energy on the other hand was tricky even with his powers. It was more an application of anti-energy manipulation, an opposite to his power, so for now he simply willed the orb away which simply changed its form into something and vanished from his hand. He spent the next hour turning energy into various forms like elemental energy, electric energy, and even gravitational energy and shaped it in various forms and manipulated them. He even split his mind and multitasked into controlling multiple constructs simultaneously with success. Once he was satisfied with his progress he went through the various martial arts in his mind. Compiling them he made a nascent martial arts created for him and went through its motions and moves, spending another hour simply feeling which muscles worked with what move and how to minimize wastage of energy while maximizing the effectiveness of his art. He looked outside the cave and saw that the day was coming to an end. He was glad that he managed to spend all of his charges without having to think too much about where to invest them. As he is not a power manipulator he will never receive the ability to store his charges. With his limits shattered the amount of charges he receives in a day will increase over time, but he will never be able to store them. They will simply reset if leaves any charges alone. He stretched his body out of habit and decided that he wanted to stretch his wings and fight for a bit. After all, if doesn't practice his martial arts then he can't progress in it. Problem is there's no one really on this planet who can give the type of fight he wants. He suddenly gets an idea. If successful then he would be killing 3 stones with 1 punch. He looked to the skies, his destination Mars. There was no way he was going to pull this stunt on Earth. He caused enough grief for one day. Determining the red planet's locations he transformed into a beam of light that pierced through the gravity well of Earth, effortlessly leaving behind the blue and green planet for its red sibling. He landed on the surface of Mars in about 3 minutes. It was okay, could definitely be improved. He took stock of his surroundings. It was a dull red ground, rocky with plenty of crags and canyons, perfect for what he wanted. He had landed on the side facing away from Earth so that no backyard scientist would get curious about the light show on the planet and spot him. After taking his place on one side he willed the energy around him into a humanoid shape. It mostly consisted of solar energy, which was excellent for his purpose. He then flexed his will and mind to give humanoid being of energy some help in moving around with the help of his psychokinesis. The energy being tested its flexibility by doing a few stretches and flexes. With this method he can use his energy manipulation to maintain the construct, use psychokinesis to animate it and test his martial arts against an opponent who take hits from him. Once he was done playing around he willed the construct to rush him. With him doing the same, they met in the center with their punches clashing each other, shattering the peaceful environment of Mars with cracks running through the ground. The carbon dioxide atmosphere fighting to stay still, but it was being pushed aside creating sonic booms as the human and the energy construct fought each other, parrying blow after blow, throwing in feints to confuse the other, confuse himself, which was not possible, and straight up brawling when tactical fighting failed. This went on for a while, after which he felt good enough after doing something more physical for the day. He sat down in ruined area to meditate. He slowly felt a calm aura take over him as went over the events of today. He contemplated about things he would have changed, things he would have done had the events not gone out of hand and so on. Slowly he brought his turbulent emotions under control, leaving him with a sense of peace. I need to accept that I'm here to stay. I don't who or what brought me here and for what reason, whether it is for entertainment or to play the role of the savior or the destroyer. One thing is for certain, that going back home is no longer possible. I stated with certainty to the red planet below me. I will need a new name, something that fits the current me. I sat there pondering for a bit as I went through various names. I recalled my features again and decided with Atrus, that sounds like a good Greek name. I patted myself in the back for coming up with a good name as I aligned myself with Earth and shot back to the blue and green planet to go over my biology knowledge in my cave. The sun was already up by the time I digested my knowledge of the field of biology. I already felt the charges of Inspired Inventor fill up and chose to add 2 more charges to biology, strengthening my knowledge even more, giving me new concepts and ideas on how manipulate biology. 2 more points in martial arts to build up on my personal fighting style. I spent 2 points on psychology to give my emotion management a more solid base, and decided to invest 2 points in cold reading. Tattletale's powers were one of the few thinker abilities that worked on me, and the one of the few that I could replicate with Inspired Inventor. Only difference is that instead of having a shard extrapolate the information around me, I do it myself. For the last 2 points I decide that programming is the way to go. Despite not having any access to a computer right now, I'll need it eventually. I have much knowledge of biology right now to use my psychokinesis to heal people, and yesterday's power control session helped a lot in bringing my abilities under my control. Now I need some actual experience in delicate work with my PK. I decide Africa is the place to go as there is not much government influence there to put a halt in my plans. If any other para-humans have an issue with me, then I can simply sort them out. Deciding it was the best course, I took off from my cave towards the continent. I landed in the country of Somalia. The people were either completely disinterested in my presence or were starting to give me a wide berth, as if simply standing close to me would put them in trouble. I asked around for the current situation for a while to the people who were willing to share some information. After putting it all together, I understood that Somalia is currently the battleground for 3 separate warlords. Burhan has been in the country for the longest and has the largest territory. Apparently he can animate constructs out of Earth. Yasir is his main competitor in terms of territory currently. He was kicked out of Ethiopia by his rival and now wishes to conquer the entire country to grow a force large enough to fight against his rival and take over Ethiopia as well. From what I understood, he has a form of sound manipulation. Lastly, the newest face in the game, named Megan, is the people's choice, as he has been opposing the other 2 for at least 3 months now. He has the smallest amount in terms of territory, manpower, and resources, but people from all over the country seem to showing support. He has one of the most interesting set of powers I have come across in this world. He can replicate any non-living thing up to 5 times for 5 different objects which don't exceed the size of 10 cubic meters. This is how he has kept his revolution ongoing despite his lack of resources. I spread out my senses and find a fairly remote settlement. Quietly leaving the area, I take off and form the energy mask around my face. Once I touch down near the settlement entrance, the guards keeping watch stand still with shock and fear at the presence of the para-human. Their thoughts must be going haywire, wondering what anybody could want with a village like theirs. Before they could carry on with their thoughts and the crowd that's starting form here can jump to conclusion, I speak out in fluent Somali. Bring out your sick and diseased, I wish to see if I can heal them. The crowd is shocked at my statement and starts furiously whispering amongst each other to find out my ulterior motives and how I've come to steal their children and wives. I just stand at the entrance with my arms crossed, counting down to 10, if they can't bring them outside then I'll just go inside. I really want to test my fine control and these people are not going to stop me. I don't wait for too long before a woman runs out of the crowd with her child in tow. Her fellow villagers trying to stop her, but she's already reached me by then. My lord, I beg you, please heal my baby girl. It's been 2 moons since she fell sick and hasn't recovered. Please help her. She begins to cry now and crowd also stops and looks at her with pity. Glancing at the child, she seems to be suffering from cholera and typhoid, common around these parts and nothing I can't heal. I will my PK into life and scan her cells and then her molecules and start to make changes, killing the harmful bacteria and parasites, restoring the child's recovery functions and using my energy giving it a boost. In a matter of seconds the girl goes from pale ghost-like in features to a healthy child. Once the child wakes up, the mother begins to smother her with love and the crowd that was standing still goes bonkers, cheering and shouting, rushing people at me. I grow a little irritated with all the noise, so I telekinetically arrange them into a line and they finally settle down. Once the mother is done thanking me, I continue fixing a multitude of problems ranging from genetic diseases, broken bones, organ failures and fevers. This has truly been a good choice. I can finally test my precision and use my biological knowledge at the same time. Once the patients are healed, a young boy walks up to me and asks, "Mister, what is your name?" His father apologizes as he berates the child for his rude manners, while I just remembered that I have yet to choose a Cape name, as is the tradition in many of these types of world. I think back to events of yesterday, can't help but thinking of the destruction I caused because of my loss of control. I need a name to remind myself the ruin I caused yesterday. Aries. I said out loud. The people nearby were staring at me, wondering what the name meant. A few of them repeat the name, testing its sound, and start cheering. I wonder if these people understand the irony that they were helped by a man who named himself Ruin in Greek. I shake my head and take of. The sun is still out, meaning I can hit a few more places. Once I have my psychokinesis-based molecular manipulation under control, I'll repay my last debt that I owe to Brockton Bay and fix the city that I ruined myself. By nightfall I managed to visit 7 more settlements and not only healed people but also helped fix their broken properties as an exercise for my project in the Bay. One of the settlement was a small township with basic internet access, so I should expect people to find out that I'm in Africa right now. For now I will go back to my cave and meditate. I haven't forgotten that the Leviathan will attacking the Bay, gunning for my head this time, and won't be holding back. The S9 are certainly going to see the people I rescued as a sign that I'm a hero, and Jack Slash will be jizzing his pants making scenarios where I'm his little bitch. Contessa should be freaking out by now because to her shard the cape known as Aries does not exist. Seeing how I'm different most of her blind spots, I wonder what decision will Cauldron make about me. Right now I need to grow in versatility in using my powers. Luxury is not needed for that. I need to prepare myself not only for these groups but also my true enemy Zion. I'm nowhere near good enough to face him right now. I need more time before going up against the entity, so it's for the best that I avoid being seen by him right now. I wonder if I faced so much trouble with my emotions yesterday due to the hard difficulty. Since I have no shard to coerce me into conflict, the higher power twisted fate itself to put me in a situation where I revealed myself to the world. One thing is for certain, the only way for me to grow is through conflict, and it seems fate will be throwing plenty of that my way. Ivory Coast, Africa. A fairly beautiful young woman was sitting in an open conference room staring at screen of her device, trying to understand just what was going on. The various clips showed a young man rescue an entire city worth of people and animals in the US within a few seconds and fly off into the sky. The set of clips showed the same young man healing people from different life-threatening illnesses and fixing broken building in Somalia, Africa. If this was just another powerful para-human, she would only be content that there was now one more powerful piece on the board against the enemy. But this man had broken every known established parameter for measuring para-human strength and was far above the strongest of the strongest capes she had ever seen. But even this wouldn't be enough to shock her. No, what shocked her was that every time she tried to draw a path against this anomaly, her power only answered with 3 words. Does not exist. Was she hallucinating? Was this a dream? How can somebody who had interacted with 500,000 people directly not exist? She had gone to the clairvoyant to ask if he had noticed anything, and the question she got in return was who. This anomaly could not be seen by thinkers. She tried tracking his location, but not a single para-human, some of the best in world at what they do, turned up empty. This anomaly could not even be tracked by thinkers. Just who is this man? Has she been like this the entire time? Questioned Alexandria from the entrance of the room, looking a little haggard and worn out after the day's events, but still projected an air of confidence around her that made people treat her with respect. It really shook her up that there is an anomaly that doesn't exist to not only her powers but also all of our most powerful thinkers and trackers. The only thinkers who can analyze this Aries are social thinkers who gather information through observing physical cues, replied Dr. Mother, who herself was disturbed by this new player in the game. they couldn't afford such a roadblock their way after putting so much effort to combat the enemy. "Have you had any luck with your abilities, David?" questioned Alexandria to Eidolon, who himself was holding a device staring into the screen as if it held all the answers to his questions. "No, not a single one of my thinker abilities that I was able to equip turned up with anything. It's like he is a ghost, a very powerful ghost who can't be sensed through para-human abilities," he replied, not even turning from the screen. "What should we do? The whole world has been going crazy over this man. He turned himself into an international icon within a day with his rescue at Brockton Bay yesterday, and when the videos of him healing some of the most deadliest diseases known to man without even putting any effort and healing multiple people at the same time, his fame turned into something of a messiah figure in certain parts of the world. The president was after me the whole day demanding any information about Ares and why he is spending his time in a god-forsaken continent when there are plenty people to help here in the States." Alexandria sighed out as she said, "The whole thing was made worse due to the fact that it was impossible to track down Ares in any way, shape, or form. The man went where he pleased, when he pleased. They didn't even know where he came from and where he stays. And going by the videos, he clearly does not care about his fame. He has only asked where the sick are and given his name when asked. Other than that, he showed no interest in communicating with anyone. The warlords are starting to get restless. They will never allow such a powerful para-human to waltz around in their territory without any consequences. I will ask our agents to be ready with on the sites where he healed people. The warlords will definitely hit those places to draw him out. We will able to get some combat data from him when things will go sour. For now we will maintain our distance from this anomaly and gather as much data as we can on him, but he will be a top priority for us. From here onwards, he just might be the key to fighting against the enemy in a straight battle," announced Dr. Mother as she left the room. Alexandria wondered just where this man came from. For a new trigger, he behaves like he had his powers for a while, but there is no way that such a powerful being would be an unknown for this long, and why on earth would he name himself after the Greek god of war whose name means ruin? Was this his way stating something, or just another para-human who considers himself a god? With the abilities that he displayed, nobody would argue about the choice of his name, but he hasn't done a single warlike thing ever since he revealed himself. So why? Just what are you planning, Ares? Wondered Alexandria as she stared at the man in the screen healing an old woman on her deathbed. Conflict. Chapter 4. I got out of the trance of meditation, feeling calm and collected, ready for today's tasks. I decided to go fix the mess I made in Brockton Bay today. I've got enough control over psychokinesis for such a task now. I want to get rid of the guilt gnawing me inside for the incident. Despite knowing that the Leviathan will be visiting the place in a few weeks, I don't want their government to decide that rebuilding the city is not worth the effort and shutting it down would be the better alternative. Especially since the bay really doesn't have many plus points to be worth considering it. With the shipping business dead in this world, the bay turned from an attractive place for future investments to a withering place that hasn't caught up with times. To make things worse, the city is well associated with being a spawning ground for various villain organizations. The Empire, the ABB, the Teeth, and many more started here and have spread throughout the country like virus. With the bay finally broken, the government might decide to simply cut its losses and shut it down rather than support. Had it been an Endbringer attack or a natural disaster, then I honestly wouldn't care much for it. I don't want people depending on me to solve all their problems. If you can't make life work for yourself, that's your fault, but here lives are being ruined because of me. It wasn't some indirect reason either. I was fully responsible for those actions and I will fix them. I can't bring back the people I killed, but I can fix the city I broke in my temper tantrum. It's already daytime, around 10:06 a.m., seeing that the charges for the day are ready to be used, I pause and think on what to spend them on. Since I'm going to be fixing a city, I'll put 2 points in architecture, 2 more in programming to understand computers better, 2 in psychology to get a better read on people. I decide to try something new and allot 2 points in for concept of efficiency and 2 for planning. I absorbed the knowledge I received and went over how I could have treated my patients more efficiently and the plans I can now create to follow them to minimize my time consumption while maximizing the result I can achieve. These last two specializations are a boon, they mesh well with so many of my other concepts that I have to put more points in these to get the most out of my knowledge. I close my eyes and quickly see how my previous concepts have meshed with efficiency and planning, and I'm most impressed by just how much streamlined everything has gotten. Even the way my memories store themselves has gotten a lot better. Feeling happier with my success, I decide to quickly drop in at the bay and finish fixing the city so that I can decide about what to do next. Brockton Bay, the train yard, relief camp. Tempers are running high currently at the largest tent set up for all the various officials of the city to come together and start fixing the city, but a bomb was dropped by Mayor Roy Christner had depressed a few and angered the rest. What the hell do you mean there are talk of shutting down the city? This land is our home, damn it, and no senator sitting in Washington is going to decide whether or not we can stay here. Shouted Danny A. Bear. Those who knew him knew of his infamous temper, and no one was surprised to see him leading charge on the rebuilding of the city. This man had persevered through so much to keep the DWA afloat despite the death of the shipping industry. The men and women of the docks had put their faith in him to provide them with some semblance of a job, and now the bigwigs at the Congress were deciding if it was worth keeping the city afloat. You think I want the city gone? I was born and raised here, to Danny. I want this place to grow and prosper as much as all of you, but what should I do when the Senate says that they're only giving us enough resources to keep the camp running and are deciding what to do with the city? I argued my case last night and was told that the Bay has become a breeding ground for problems and that we must further evaluate if the Congress should continue supporting such an anti-national place or assimilate its citizens in nearby cities. Just what do you want me do, Danny? I tried begging, but all I got was to wait until further notice, said Roy Christner, looking completely shabby and defeated. The last 2 days were turning out be his personal nightmare. He went through enough trauma that had he a corona pollentia he would have triggered by now. I knew that letting those damn capes strut around like they own the place will come back to bite us someday, spoke up Police Commissioner Wilson Bratton, from the side, glaring at Director Piggott. Ever since Director Piggott was put in charge of the PRT, the coordination between the BBPD and the PRT have been at an all-time low. Both the director and the commissioner are stubborn people who things to work at their pace and directions. This has seeped into both their respective departments, which has caused a massive friction between the two. I think we both know trying to start a Wild West situation on the streets of the Bay is as good as declaring a challenge to all the villains in the country. Do you want the butcher or worse the S9 to accept that and come in here? I have requested for more para-human and PRT support since the day I joined here as director. The only answer I ever received was to adjust and do with what I have, and I have done exactly that. Just like the mayor, Chief Director Costa Brown is overseeing whether or not the Bay needs local branch of the PRT or not. I have begged her to give us more time to put ourselves together and build this city back, but I will not entertain any accusations being thrown at my team as if we were the only one responsible for this whole mess. Director Emily Piggott replied curtly. One could see the stress she was under, both physically with her health and mentally with the ultimatum from the top hanging over her head. Despite all this, she still looked as prim and proper as she could get. Do we know where Aries is at? Asked Fire Chief Nestor Riley quietly from the side. He had personally gone down to the ferry station where Aries had arranged the bodies of the victims of the disaster. The whole thing was a somber affair as he saw many volunteers and his men identify the bodies one by one and prepare them. He was thankful that the cape had dropped of the bodies at a remote location. Not only did it help them prepare the bodies with respect to the deceased, but they also didn't have to worry about the rest of the population catch any diseases. In the latest video out of Africa, he had helped a village not only be healing its people, but also fixing their buildings and whatnot. I was wondering if he could aid us once more in our need, he continued softly. Nobody has been able to track him or knows anything about him so far. He seems to be a very power anti-thinker. The watchdog is being pressurized by the government to produce any data on him, but from what I heard, thinker powers treat him as though he doesn't exist, replied Emily in a subdued tone. She might suspect the new super cape, even question his choice of name, but she ardently wished for some support in rebuilding the city in these trying times. I spy with my little eye something that begins with a B. Is it a bird? Nope. How about a ball? Do you any ball around here? Well then why don't you let me know, smartapants? I meant the broken bulb in the trash pile, Taylor. Wow, how on earth did you even notice in the pile, Dinah? I just happened to notice it, giggled Dinah. She and Taylor had met in the morning when Taylor volunteered to look after the children. The camps of the train yard and the boat graveyard had merged together, and the people from the beach were starting to move in at the new mega camp to help reduce the use of resources. So far only the merchants were creating trouble by trying to distribute drugs in the camp, which earned them ire of every single para-human in Brockton Bay. For the first time both villains and heroes agreed on something. Ultimately they had the merchants thrown out of the camp and partitioned them off to a corner, and the rest of the camp was a lot more subdued now. Hey Taylor, Dinah, have some chocolate chip cookies I managed to get from the raiding team, called out Lisa, walking towards them with a packet on cookies that she was already munching on. Dinah quickly grabbed a cookie and started to relish it, while Taylor was still somewhat shocked that she had actually managed to befriend someone this early. They both met last night at the women's side of the camp, and Lisa had stuck around with Taylor since then. Despite her issues, Taylor managed to open up a bit and for once enjoyed the conversation, a girl around her age. Are you got it with their permission, or you borrowed it without anyone knowing? Questioned Taylor with her hands already inside the packet. Nope, I asked the team to get me one for the little girl in our group, she replied while eating. Then you better give me the packet, Dinah said with her hands stretched out. We wouldn't want to be misleading those good people now, would we? Asked Dinah with a smile. What they don't know won't hurt them, replied Lisa impishly, which quickly devolved into a play fight with the two pulling the cookie packet from each other. Once they settled down just looking towards the ruins of their city, Taylor quietly asked, "What's going to happen to us now?" "Do you want the truth?" asked Lisa seriously. When both Taylor and Dinah nodded, she took in a deep breath and shared the information she picked up today. While I was in the camp, I walked across the command tent. The people inside were getting awfully loud and arguing with each other. Once I managed to know the reason, I could see why. She paused, getting a grim look in her eyes. The Congress is deciding on whether or not they want to rebuild the city, as it is seen as breeding grounds for villains to spread out from. Both Taylor and Dinah were left wide-eyed. If they don't rebuild the city, then what are we going to do? Questioned Taylor, wondering what she was going to do now. She would never get a chance to be a hero and help the city, and Mom, oh God, Mom was still here. What would happen to her remains now? We will probably be divided and sent off to nearest cities that can accommodate us, said Lisa glumly. Her thoughts were racing inside her mind. For now she was safe in the women's section of the camp, but she had already seen the mercenaries of Coil spot her, so he already knew where she was. Just how was she going to get free from that freak? Dinah? What's wrong? You haven't said anything for a while now, asked Taylor. When Lisa looked toward Dinah, she saw her stare into the sky. She looked upwards and felt her eyes widening. Reaching her hands out to Taylor, she shook her and pointed up. Taylor, look up. Is that? Questioned Taylor, wide-eyed herself. Yup, looks like he came back. Above in the sky, the para-human named Ares floating and looking down to the ruins of the city. I made a good decision to come back early. From what I gathered with the talks around the whole camp, it seems what I feared came true. The people in top really dislike this city and have no intention of rebuilding the place. Well, they don't have to bother. I'll fix my mistake on my own. I concentrate my senses and imprint every bit of the city layout in my mind. It could definitely be better, but I'm not here to improve the architecture, only rebuild the city as it was. Maybe improve some structures that were in a state of dying, but that's it. I open my arms and will out PK to begin restoring the city, and right before everybody's eyes the city seemed to winding back in time and fixing itself. Boss! Quick, come out, that ultra cape who saved us all is back, shouted Neuter from outside, interrupting her meeting with the rest of the villain bosses. The kid's not wrong, Okaz Hira, the cape from the day before yesterday is back. right now he's just flying above the city, walked in Kanyoji Kudo, dutifully informing Lung. Despite being an unpowered human, Kudo is one of the most important member of the ABB, handling their day-to-day businesses and reporting every single thing back to Lung. Lung stiffened beside fault line, but it was too quick for anyone else to notice but her. She wondered why the man who fought the Leviathan might do that when she recalled that Lung had been unconventionally silent since the disaster. Now that she looked back, it has always been the ABB that touts Lung's fight with the Endbringer to attract people to their gang, but the man himself has never once said anything about the fight. A trauma maybe, she thought to herself as everybody moved outside the tent and looked up in the air to see Ares floating above the ruined city, looking down as if in thought. "You think he can do it?" questioned Leet from the side, looking as tired as the rest of them. The disaster had hit the villain community particularly hard, since no civilian in their right mind is going help villains, forcing them to pool together resources to stay afloat. "Do what?" questioned Uber. "Fix the city. He did it in Africa yesterday. Saved 8 villages in a matter of hours before disappearing. He can do it, right?" asked Leet with hope in his voice, causing everyone to look up with some hope in their eyes. "That was just a couple of buildings. You think he can do the same with an entire city?" spoke out Rune sourly. She sighed after hearing that tone. "Teenagers, you can't do anything to please them. I wonder how he fares in a fight. With a name like Ares, I expected him to be a tough bastard, but all he's done is save and heal a bunch of dying people," spat out Hook Wolf like a true psychopath. It didn't a genius to see that if this Ares went into the deep end, the world would be dealing a Endbringer in human form, only this Endbringer would be faster and stronger than any cape in history. Online forums are filled with Ares vs Scion debates, especially with similarities between the two. Both are extremely strong and have a variety of powers, although Ares has to show his powers fully as it's been only 3 days since his reveal. Both rarely speak, and both operate around the world without any concern for local governments and organizations. "Hook Wolf, keep those thoughts to yourself and shut your mouth," growled out Kaiser from his position. She truly pitied him for having to deal with bad elements like Hook Wolf and was glad she didn't have any such trouble with her crew. "It looks like he's done with whatever he was doing," called out Gregor. Everybody turned their attention back as the cape raised both his hands as if pulling something from below, and the whole city came to life. It looked as though time itself was being reversed as the city put itself back. "Oh my god, how can such a cape even exist? Doesn't he have any limits?" whispered Purity from the side. She wasn't wrong in asking that question. The man in question was still floating above without a care in the world. He didn't even remotely look like he was putting any effort or was feeling any stress from fixing an entire city. "Well, it looks like he can actually fix the entire city," Princess Neuter teased Rune, trying to flirt with her. "Ugh, does that boy not learn? He's been doing this last night. Stupid hormonal teenagers. Shut up, you lizard. And stop speaking to me," and here we go again. "Are you recording this, dragon?" asked Arms Master, silently looking the cape named Ares wave his hands and fix the entire city. "Colin, are you all right?" His earpiece sounded with his soul friend's voice in concern. "Just how are we supposed to compete with such beings, dragon? Before them we might as well not be worth anything," he replied sullenly. Just a few hours ago he found out that there was a danger of the entire city being shut down and the BB branch being broken up and scattered off to wherever the headquarters felt necessary. The worst part was that no invention of his could fix the city. He was designing a prediction software to track and predict Endbringers and was even developing a weapon to help combat them. This was supposed to be his chance to shine once more and reach a level of heroism only the Triumvirate had touched. He wanted to walk the same path that Hero once walked before his demise as the strongest tinker in the world. But it all came crashing down 2 days ago. He learned just how weak he was compared to the true powerhouses of the world. 3 days. In just 3 days Ares went from an unknown to being compared to Scion himself. Just how can he compare himself to people who can cover entire continents' worth of territories without even looking a little worn out? "Oh Colin, we can only do the best we can," if we all spend time comparing ourselves with people like Aries and Scion, then we are simply doing ourselves a disservice. Sure, they help a lot more people and can do incredible feats that we can't compare with, but they can't be at every place at the same time. Think back to all the people you've helped in your career. Despite the presence of the Triumvirate and Scion, it was you that helped those people. Colin, you can't give up just because a stronger person revealed themselves. Just try to imagine the pressure that comes with wielding such power. The internet is already filled to the brim with people begging him to visit their countries to help them. Power has its price, Colin. You can only be the best version of yourself. Please don't feel down. Comparing yourself with people like Aries and Scion, she spoke to him gently. Yes, he had forgotten how the world turned on its heels when Scion first showed himself. People begging him help them, governments wanting him for themselves, businessmen offering him the moon to align himself with them, but nothing moved the golden hero. He simply carried on helping people without any regard for what others told him. The world was once again filled with hope, especially since Aries actively asked for the sick, flying from village to village helping people on a continent most people have written of as a Cape playground. The heroes couldn't track him down either, but held hope that he would actually show up the places requiring the most help. Are we going to try communicating with him this time? Asked Vista from the side, staring astonished. The city was fixing itself back at the orders of the Cape flying in the air. This seems to be the longest we've ever seen him at one location, and it's only been about 4 minutes. The city is almost fully reconstructed. Knowing him, once his job is done he'll take off, remarked Clock Blocker. Madam Director just called. She has ordered Dauntless to fly up and make contact with Aries. Please keep your distance from him and only inquire if he willing to maintain some form of communication with the PRT. Dauntless, I don't have to say this, but please choose your words extremely carefully, and under no circumstance are you to initiate any form of conflict. Miss Militia joined the rest of her team giving out orders to Dauntless. He seemed taken aback and quite obliviously didn't expect such a mission. Dauntless, if you think your life is in danger, run away. We'll support you from the ground. Don't take any action on your own, Arms Master said to him. I'll be fine, guys. He really has done nothing but help people since he revealed himself. Besides, I'm going to be wearing the body cam so you guys will be able to see and hear the conversation. Well, it seems that he's almost done with the city. Wish me luck, Dauntless called out as he wore his body cam, checked over his equipment once more and slowly ascended to the sky. Never thought I would this nervous at the prospect of simply talking to another para-human, Sean thought to himself as he slowly gained altitude. He wanted to make sure Aries could see him coming slowly so as to not feel like he was picking a fight against him. Not that it would matter. He saved Addison from inside the play tent in the basement of the house, and many more such cases were found out last night, and did all that at speeds that's supposed to relativistic to light itself. He obviously possesses a thinker ability strong enough to know the location of every single living thing in city and rescue them at the same time. If this was going to be a fight, then I would already be dead by now, he thought as he climbed higher and felt the air thin around him. The city looked completely the same as it was before the disaster, a testament to the Cape's power. As he reached closer to Aries, he could feel that aura of power once more. This time he was a lot closer to him in person than when first saw him above the train yard. He truly looked like model or bodybuilder, his body just contained within his clothes. He was tall as well, taller than 6 feet in height, and despite having fixed the entire city single-handedly, he looked like he didn't do anything strenuous in nature, simply folding his arms and looking at the city below. Excuse me, Sir Aries? I'm Dauntless from the Protectorate, Brockton Bay Branch. I just wanted to personally thank you for saving every single person, including my friends and family, from the disaster. This was something I wanted to say to him on the say he saved us, but better late than never, right? He simply replied, not even looking at my direction or bothering to continue the conversation. We were wondering if you would be able to communicate with the PRT to help us to know where you would be willing to help out, and also for us to reach you in times of need. I spoke out sincerely, hoping that he didn't misunderstand my words and feel as though I asked to track his location at all times. This time he did turn towards me, the mask still covering his face with two bright red lights shining from where his eyes should be. I felt a little conscious when he looked at me, but his body language didn't say that he was looking down on me or anything like that. He was simply looking. No, he stated with certainty. His voice was deep, a little disappointing about his reply but expected. "My work here is done," he said. I think that's one of the longest lines he's spoken ever. Before I could thank him again or even form a sentence, he was gone. No sonic boom or any indicator this time. One moment he was there and the next he was not there. He definitely got his powers under control, I thought to myself as I felt myself sweating all over. He was definitely a new trigger who had yet to gain full control over their powers. Many of the power testers had hypothesized. He broke the rules of physics multiple times when saving the people, but then why did they still apply to him in flight? Many wondered. The most prevalent theory was that he didn't know the full extent of his powers yet, which seemed to be the case. I slowly descended back to the rest of the team. "You all right, Dauntless? That was kind of intense there." When he turned towards you, I swear I felt as if he was looking at me through the camera, spoke of Clock Blocker, reducing some of the tension in the air. "I'm fine. It was just a little disappointing that he refused. I was just hoping that he didn't misunderstand my words. I'm a bit upset that I wasn't able to thank him again for helping to rebuild the city, but just like you said, the moment he was done he simply left." "You did wonderfully, Dauntless, although we are all a little let down for not having made in progress with communications between us. He might change his mind in the future. Let's get ready to arrange the civilians and head back to the city," said Miss Militia as she started walking towards the wildly cheering crowd of people. Once again they all felt hopeful for the future, knowing that somebody as powerful as Ares was looking out for them.